Alrighty, folks, we probably should be getting started here. This is going to be a relatively simple presentation. You've each got a printed copy of the strategic plan we've drafted. I'm going to take you through kind of an intro, and I'll probably do some concluding discussion with you, but we've also got some other folks who've helped with the process who are going to present. And I'm just going to give a little bit of background. The executive committee decided that we should have a task force that would explore putting together a strategic plan. That was decided on last year, started getting a group together, started drafting it toward the end of the year, got a decent working version together this year. And this is our most presentable draft to you that looks pretty nice. We have a longer workbook version for the sort of implementation that's just too much to share, but this covers all the essentials of that. And the task force was meeting about once a month from December on to get a draft together to think about some of the biggest challenges we face, some of the biggest gifts we have. I'm not going to spend a ton of time summarizing the introductions, the sort of SWOT analysis, the strengths, challenges, opportunities, and threats stuff that's in there for you to read. If you want to talk about it more, you're welcome to chat with me or anybody who's on the task force, which includes Becky and Sean and me, and Chris Edwards got on there at some point. Who else am I? And John Heschelman and Brenda Rodeheffer, who's not with us at this point. I don't know where she slipped out to. She's not here presently. She's still alive. Don't let any rumors start.
To be clear, she just went home.
Yes. Which she went to her home in Indianapolis. So we have three main priorities here. The first one is that we have heard from a lot of folks that things are just not where we'd like them to be spiritually. I think that comes up in a lot of ways. I think a lot of meetings don't feel as lively as they would like to. The yearly meeting doesn't feel as lively as we'd like it to. The business doesn't feel as lively as we'd like it to. And that's really our top concern is, I use the word innervation because I really like that word. It means to put nerves in or to put energy into a body, and I think that's really what we need. So our top priority is about getting more spiritual energy into the yearly meeting. The second priority focuses on leadership, and really the focus there is recognizing that a lot of our energy, if we're going to get a renewal, is going to come from our leadership, whether they be paid or our most involved volunteers. Those are the type of people we're really going to be leaning on to lead to some growth and new energy. And the third priority is really about outreach and new growth and new projects and recognizing we need to do some new things and new experiments if we are going to get the kind of growth we're looking for. So Sean is going to tell us about priority 1. Becky is going to tell us about priority 2. Dave Hansen's going to tell us about priority 3. Before we launch into them talking, do you have any just general questions you want to talk about right now? Because our hope is the people will present for a very short bit, 2 or 3 minutes on each section, and then you'll have some chance for giving feedback, asking questions, giving input, because this is a draft. I mean, I think we would like to get it in action by the end of the year if possible, but we're going to have more opportunities for feedback and getting a general sense if this is the right direction. And this is just the first of those opportunities. Peggy. We don't have a current strategic plan in place. We do not have a current strategic plan in place. Yeah.
Well, see, that's what we've been told on the Airline board, and there was one made that it got put on the shelf, and nobody ever looked at it. So now, but of course, all the things we've had to do, they said, well, you should have the strategic plan first. But I'm just curious.
Yeah. So when our illustrious superintendent sisters were in place, and Sylvia, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is they did various they did various smaller and very important pieces of getting things more organized, cutting away some of the not as life-giving parts of the yearly meeting, and then started on a larger strategic plan, but I think COVID and those sorts of things derailed what they were trying to get implemented. Okay, that was an accurate summary? All right, okay, good. Yes, if you need a copy, they're in a black basket right there on the... I was handing them out, but I kind of stopped doing that, so... And I should acknowledge that I am not gifted at making things look presentable. My version is very much like a spreadsheet and document form. Rachel helped us get this into a more presentable form, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah, Rachel's done. All right. Any other general questions before we let Sean talk about priority one? Okay, go ahead, Brian. It obviously depends on the feedback we get and how well we did at capturing what the rest of the yearly meeting thinks, but I'd love to really have it in place by the end of the year and we'll start implementing some of the priorities that we've talked about now. We've already achieved some of them, but... Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Sean for a bit.
One of the goals deals with fundraising. So, Alicia, that copy is $5.99. If you want the hardback edition or one that Rachel signs, we are looking at priority one, which is pages 5 and 6. And I hope at some point you'll take a few minutes to read 2, 3, and 4. There's some good information and just kind of an overview of some things. You'll see in each of these priorities there's an action plan and a hope for outcome. And we are, even as we are meeting this week, we are attempting to talk about some of these things, which is in action A, which is talking about the change and decline in membership, kind of identifying what's been lost and identify opportunities and need for new spiritual and logistical practices. So we've been trying to, part of what Tom has been talking about and Myron is along those lines. I would say we haven't, I will say I don't think we have talked much about the grief part of it. And the grieving part I think is a huge deal. I think there is a lot of grief. This is the point probably of the few minutes that I have that I want to point out. I think that there is more grief in many meetings in our yearly meeting and collectively than we maybe want to admit or maybe want to or recognize, and that has a bearing on our confidence about who we are, and that has a bearing on how we present ourselves in some ways to outwardly facing. I think it can also just it impacts us as grief does. And grief is not a bad thing, but when it's unrecognized and unaddressed, then I think that's when it can become problematic. It can become it turns into other things. And so I just I would say that's something that I would love for some of our meetings and even our yearly meeting to talk about a little bit more. I don't know if you see that or if you're going, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. But I think there's been enough loss. There's been loss, and I think there's grief over loss, whether it's people who have been longtime leaders who we've lost, or whether it's been unreconciled conflict, or some of those kinds of things. I think those add into some of that, and I think it impacts us in ways. So I will identify that that's an area I hope we can continue to talk about a little bit more. Maybe just looking on page 6 gives you, I like the picture of it, the action plans and outcomes. I would say that in the second action plan about research and experiment with spiritual practices that are meeting the needs of younger generations as well, we'd like to see there be a mix of those things. And we're pretty good at recognizing what has been helpful and continues to be helpful to a certain part of our population, but we want to continue to figure out what are ways that spiritual practices might be expanded or understood differently, without throwing out our core, what our core is. And and that includes discipleship, certainly. That includes ways that we help raise up leadership. We help raise up folks who are new to the church, new to the Quakers. Let's see, and that also could include some grant possibilities at some point. We need to do this regardless if we get another grant that we hope we get, which is about spiritual practices, actually, from Lily. So Lily's put out this thing that's been really, I think you heard Pat talk about it the first night, I think, actually, if you were here, and how to weave that in at the camp here. But also, we were talking about how we might be able to do this. Tom could tell you more if you wanted to know more about the grant application. And then, what would new spiritual practices look like that become a part of our yearly meeting practice together? And new not just for the sake of being new, but new because they bring a new expression of our core values, or the things that we find important. How do our spiritual practices help us know Christ better? How do our spiritual practices help build our life of faith better and better, and not just as individuals, but together as a local meeting or as a yearly meeting, some of those kinds of things. So that's my 2 or 3 minutes, and those are some of the things that we're looking at on priority 1. Are you priority 2?
Yes.
All right.
Sean,
Yes.
you keep talking about our core values.
Yeah.
Have you identified them?
Well, yes, I think that's part of a part of this process, that we need to be clear about what it is that, when I'm saying that, I'm thinking more about, I hear people be afraid that we're going to change something and throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that we are, so I think it's important to say new expressions don't necessarily mean a change in things, and so that may include our focus on how we view Scripture and how we view Jesus, and how, those I think are really important things to solidify, with an understanding that there's some diversity about that, among us as well, and so trying to figure out what that means. But we don't want to wipe the slate clean in that regard and start over. We have a
I just think it's important that would be something you do first. Figure out what those core values are, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Before you go on to
Sure. Well, and this is partially part of the reason I wanted us to have a positive conversation about faith and practice a little bit too, already. So if we could have, and so that these things are kind of walking alongside together, I think that's important. Yeah.
I think that's a really key point, is like, we had a gathering in May where we talked about faith and practice, and there was obviously different views on different things, but there was largely consensus about the idea we need to look at it again and have conversations in the coming years, which I would envision being a long process of, like, let's have a group that talks about these things, brings them to different gatherings of the yearly meeting, where to see what parts of this are life-giving, what parts of this have just kind of moved beyond being useful, which, like, a lot of the just technical matter in faith and practice, like, there are committees and things that just don't exist anymore, and there's some stuff like that just needs to be talked through. And I think that is where more of the values conversation would really happen. But the reality is we've had so much change happen over the last few decades that we are really behind the ball on talking these things through, and no single process is going to handle all of those things. We're going to need to have multiple simultaneous conversations that are going to take some time to really reorient ourselves.
So I'm going to direct you to page 9 of the document. That's a good summary of it. And this is following up. I was excluded from an earlier group. So what we're talking about is that now we're talking about the people that are 65 and older. Okay. And that those are the majority of the leaders we have now. And we need to make sure that we are finding new ones to replace them. That's what this one here is all about. We are supporting the current leadership, but we are also looking to find new leaders and strengthen them and do some development. And this is pastors, but this is also future leaders. These are also our future, property trustees. It's our clerks of the meeting. It's our Sunday school teachers. It's our camp counselors. We need all of them, and we need them all at different levels. We need people to come to yearly meeting too. These are also the leaders, the ones that come here. And so we've got some activities here that are really designed around the people that are in those roles now. And what can we do to support them? And then as new people come into those roles, supporting them. The second column here is all about leadership development. How are we going to find people? It's really about once we find them, what we do with them. So maybe one of the outcomes that's missing is how do we identify them? We keep talking about all these good things Rachel does. And one of the things that she did last week for camp is she had a young man in his 20s that goes to her church, that she harassed him until he said yes. And anyone knows that if Rachel's after you, you don't stand a chance. You will give in. And he was the perfect epitome of a counselor. Never been one before, but she saw the potential in him. And he came up here. He had the only cabin of boys that we had for the week. And he just knew the way to be a mentor, to joke with them, but to have them all feel like he was there for them. And the best part is afterward on our WhatsApp, he says, I want to come back next year. It's like, yes. So we need to find more Sams out there. We need to find more women out there. Such that luckily we were very fortunate that our speakers last week at camp is that we did see, a couple of women pastors last week, with Rachel and Olivia. And so we need people, we need our young people. First of all, we need to find the young people. We need to get them in our Sunday schools. We need to get them in our camps. And then we need to find a way to keep touch with them. And then hopefully get them into these internships or other programs that we have. So that way then they are here when they are 65 and 70 years old. So that's our goal. And then the last one, those of us who grew up as pastors' kids know that they are not the best well-paying jobs ever. When my dad was a pastor, he worked at the grocery store. That is why every Garris child will return the grocery cart to the front door. You do not leave it out in the parking lot. That is a requirement in my family. Now we have cart return areas, so now that Dad's not watching, I go for the cart return area, maybe not the front door. Is there some way for the yearly meeting to help establish maybe some type of business program? Okay, this is just one idea. This is not necessarily it, but maybe it's a landscaping service or a lawn care service where the yearly meeting could set something up and then someone could take that template and implement it. And maybe that program ends up hiring maybe people that were formerly in incarceration, that it's hard to find jobs. And that way then they can get jobs and then the individuals get money managing a business, that type of thing. So that's what C is about, because that's one that if you read it, you may not understand what it's trying to say. And I've heard a couple pastors talking about, well, how many hours a week are you? So many of our pastoral roles are also only part-time. And so then how do you support your family and yourself with this? And this may be something along the way. There may be one or two different ideas, but really thinking about how can we support them. And also this may be some way that could support someone maybe while they're going through seminary. Have some money coming in then before they go into the pastorate. So, questions on page number 9 in leadership?
I would just add that in the grants booklet, if you look at the grants booklet, you'll see that there's already some stuff in place for this regarding the grants. So, that meeting to help pay for retreats for their pastors will have a financial incentive. There's some incentives for meetings that are recruiting young adults to work at camp and stuff. So that grant program is folded in with some of these priorities.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So what was said is out there in that booklet that we have been trying to push on you, and people are still not always picking up. Those grant opportunities will pay for some of these things you already see in here, such as the pastor's retreat, plus as identifying future leaders and getting them into different programs. So not only do we have this, we also have ways to help you fund that. Okay. All right, Dave.
Well, hello all. I'm covering pages 10 and 11 on the outreach and building out piece of the strategic plan. And what's kind of cool is with the bit I'm going to talk about is the question asked of Sean about the values kind of hits what would be done in part 3. And there's a really big temptation to be like, could we start meetings if we don't have our values nailed in exactly the way we think they should, or our faith and practice? Faith and practice, is it, can it sustain what we're trying to do, or are we going to wait until if we do something with that or not do something with that? And one of the things to think about is these initiatives, a lot of them are going to be done by people in this room. These are people here that many of you all know and have interacted with. And we seem to have great relationships and trust. And there's a lot of faith and trust in these activities. So some of the highlights of this are, building supplies for meetings who want to do outreach and spin up their own outreach groups. There might be social justice activities, Quaker teaching materials, whatever kind of affinity groups that meetings find that people are drawn to their meeting about. And usually that's 1 or 2 people in the meeting already who have an interest in that and are willing to kind of take that on and lead it. So you'll see action item 3A1 is the materials. And then action 3B is the develop and supporting of micro meetings, house meetings, and partner ministries. You're like, well, how could we do something like that when our meetings feel like they're declining? Why would we go start a small meeting somewhere else? Don't we have plenty of small meetings already? And it's like, yeah, we do have plenty of small meetings already. And what I encourage you to think about with that is that when you do different meetings, it gives different people opportunities to try and experiment in different ways. As many of you all have been involved in Quaker business at one point or another, changing things in business process can be, we can have long meetings about exciting things. And when you start a meeting like a micro group fresh, you can really kind of experiment with the intent to not quite succeed. Like if it lasts for 6 months and you get a group of people together and it goes really well and it keeps going, great. If you go for 6 months with your small group and at the end of the 6 months, people are like, not quite working, that's fine too. We don't want to do that with our monthly meetings. Like we don't want to put our monthly meetings in a situation where they're trying something crazy. And then after 6 months, everyone's like, we need to end this, right? Well, monthly meetings want to keep the keep the level going and then experiment as they're all led. But we can do radical experimentation with like a faith group over a short period of time and a long period of time. And these would look like either house meeting sharing type groups that Tom has talked about, even more traditional type church house plants, and those sorts of things. And then the last thing is, from the yearly meeting level, having a communications group that will help more broadly facilitate outreach opportunities, like big movement type things. Like recent one is the Iran war stuff that has been happening. There have been monthly meetings that have been passing minutes about it. There are probably people in meetings who aren't doing that sort of thing who might like to be a part of that. And we have boards. Some of you all on outreach, and we have social concerns boards. And so we have boards as well that are kind of tasked with moving some of these things along too. But sometimes there's a disconnect between those boards and our local boards, and even those two boards and each other. And this is the opportunity for us to re-envision what that would look like, so that I guess it'd be more smooth, and there'd be the opportunity would be more action-oriented. Is Chris here? There we go. We were talking a little bit about the board we were on. And just in general, with the boards, having the boards be a place where we're coming together to do stuff. And like, not just to do things. That was terrible. But a place where we're coming together. But then the outcome of those meetings isn't, we're not coming together and signing checks and doing that, but we're also like really helping facilitate that in the monthly meetings in a way that our board members are then going out into those activities, whether it's the CM&E board members are then participating in that local nurturing of ministers, which our CM&E board members do. But our outreach board members are then out participating in those outreach opportunities and that type of dynamic yearly meeting experience. So if you look at the boxes on the right, I found this to be the best presentation from my brain. But if any of you all have any questions, please direct them at Rachel and Tom Rockwell. So thank you.
Any questions on priority 3 that you want to talk about? Well, go for it. I think they want you to come up and use the mic. Sorry. I say they, but really, it's we all would like you to use the mic so Zoom people can hear.
Well, this is really for Rachel. Rachel, what words are hidden under the title banner on the top of page 10?
I don't know. It would be the longer form of what's under A on 11.
Okay.
Which is why I'm confused.
Okay. I just saw there's some hidden words there, and I was kind of wondering.
I think it's just provide yearly meeting level outreach to support meetings unable to do outreach and who
Desire it.
Yeah. I just had to shrink it to fit in the box.
All technical errors, spelling errors, anything, you can write them physically in this, and on the back there are notes sections, and you can write stuff down if you want, and you can give it to me, and we'll fix all that kind of stuff.
I really didn't want to walk up to the microphone.
I know, it's a bad system for that kind of thing. Yes.
So just on the social justice projects, you have lots of organizations who've been hanging out with you and would love to be partners and resources for you. And I'll just say a couple things about FCNL. One is that if you do minutes, we collect minutes on our website. And so we have a whole collection of minutes from lots of theological backgrounds of Quakers on different issues. And so like if you're looking for language or things like that, that's a good resource. You can send your minute to us and we can, include it. We also provide a cover letter that you can use to send your minutes to your members of Congress to say this is the statement of a religious organization in your community. I was talking with Ed about doing that with the Indie First Friends minutes. So I'm happy to connect with folks about that. And then also thinking about, opportunities not just with FCNL, but also like AFSC has an emerging leaders program. FCNL has a number of young adult programs. And I do think it's really powerful to identify people's gifts and really see them and be like, no, you have a gift and you can do it. And we have a spring conference every year, called Friends Changemaker Weekend. It's actually an intergenerational event. So like that could be a way to, if you see potential to like support people. Like we had a great group of Earlham students who came this year from Indiana. I got to do the Indiana lobby training. It was super fun. But that's just, there are lots of ways, and I am more than happy to talk with folks about like ways to partner so you don't have to do all that by yourself.
Yeah, there are lots of resources out there in the Quaker world. And that's a good example of one where we already have something underway, too, was that our last, not executive committee, but the other one, help me out, administrative council, we accepted the generous donation of a house in Richmond from Brian Young and agreed to take over some housing ministries of Iglesia Amigos. And, you know, within the next couple years, that will be like a quite vibrant project where we are helping quite a few families every year. So it's something we're already starting to do. Okay. Well, broadly speaking, do these seem like the priorities that you see for the yearly meeting that we need to start doing? Some real spiritual renewal, supporting and growing our leadership base, and really getting out in our communities and doing new work. Yes. Yeah, okay, I got a thumbs up from Chris back there. That's yes, okay. Obviously we could do lots of, yeah, come on up, Becky.
This is just a general comment about strategic plans. You know, we have some goals at the top level and we have some tactics. Those tactics may be modified or changed over time. So don't get too caught up in what you see there. Is like, I'm not sure that's the way, because, you know, we may realize that ahead of time. We may start something and go, this isn't working. What we're going to do is we're going to achieve the top level goal. And these are just the ideas right now as to how we're going to get there. So the tactics themselves are not the driver, it's the goal at the top.
Yep.
Sorry. Well, I'm just recognizing that this is pretty staff heavy. It's a lot is done at the staff level, and which right now we've been able to kind of increase our staffing by adding Myron recently. My concern is less about the staff being busy and more about kind of our process for making decisions and that sort of thing. We don't want to exclude. We don't want that all to be made at the staff level. Does that make sense? And so this is an area where you can continue to say to us, well, I don't feel like we're being included in kind of some of this process moving forward, because as friends, we really value that, and we want to continue to value that, but we realize also with fewer numbers that there are, I mean, even just kind of filling some of our boards right now is really challenging. And so we don't want to take this on with, or you to think that we're taking this on with the intent of trying to cut people out of the decision making, but we recognize also that we have staff that can do some of this. So for whatever that's worth, I just want you to hear that we care about that decision making process, but recognize that this is a staff heavy kind of responsibility.
And one thing I was going to say on that is there are going to be lots of ways for you to get involved in these different things that we're hoping to do. So we will definitely be marketing pretty consistently, like here are ways you can get involved, and we hope people will want to participate. And over the, coming into the fall, I would expect us to see Zoom sessions once a month about this to give people an opportunity to give some input. I know the executive committee will discuss it some more. It'll certainly come up at the fall admin council. Annual sessions in August is already pretty packed, so don't quote me on that one. But there will be lots of opportunities to continue to talk about this. You don't have to have your completed thoughts on things. This is just an opportunity to see it, to think about it as we go forward. I am curious, are there other ways that we could follow up on this discussion that you think would be helpful? I mean, we'll definitely have regular points of discussion, but are there specific things you would like to see? Come use the mic.
This kind of relates to something I said earlier. Under internal challenges, there's a sentence, at the same time, ideological diversity within the yearly meeting requires careful discernment and communication to maintain unity amid differing perspectives. And I don't see that that's addressed by any of the priorities. So I wondered if there was a way that that would be implemented.
One, I think a long faith and practice discussion is a great place for a lot of that stuff to happen. But two, just having lots of points of regular communication is something we've been trying to do a lot more of. One thing is, like, we've drawn out our annual sessions this year, so we had more time to talk. We had an all-day gathering in May. We had this time of fellowship and discussion. We are having another all-day of business in August, and we are really working to create a lot of points of contact for ongoing conversation about the various different things we're trying to do right now as a yearly meeting, we are trying to do lots of things at once, because that's really just the reality we are in, is that we kind of need to be doing that.
Recognizing I'm speaking out of turn, that I think some of the questions that you ask could be explored in C.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And picking up on that point, that the directions are at the top, and then the implementations, 1C, the explore new spiritual practices, the yearly meeting level, that in a part of that process, what you hope to be doing is to identifying that piece of core principles, and then identifying spiritual practice that is deeply grounded, that is not easily swayed by differing opinions or differing theological understandings, so that you can have two people who disagree about a disagreeable topic, like I would never wear that shirt. Just saying. And he doesn't care whether I would wear that shirt or not. And theology has some very sticky issues. These are very deep personal identity things. But in some ways, I can say there's nothing that Tom thinks that's going to affect whether I have a deep connected relationship with God. I might learn things from Tom, but he cannot, in his own understanding, diminish mine. Yeah. My relationship with God, and an explored spiritual practice works at getting to that place where that someone's an engaged relationship does not diminish or cut, but adds value, sharpens, strengthens, encourages. And one day I might wear a multicolored shirt, but thanks.
Damn.
Michael actually said a lot of what I was feeling to say with the the temptation is to draw the circle and write the thing, and then put the measure up that we then all abide by, and producing maybe the measure that wasn't even there before. It's just a new one now, and then we put it up, and then we all make a choice on, are we with that measure or not? When there's already that out there now. Like, we're here now. Like, all of us in this room, online, we're here together now for a reason. We're here together now. And are we going to look for a reason that some of us aren't going to be here? I think dialing in boundaries in such a way, like Michael said with the shirts, there's a core of the reason why we're all here together today. And it's really tempting for us to be like, and let's really articulate that well, because a lot of us are really well educated and we can write wonderful things and we have great words, and then we can dissect those words, and then we can realize that we don't all agree, and then we can go our separate ways. And so I think the relational nature of the body of Christ that we are together today is something that's why, like, I'm not really afraid of doing the micro meetings or the worship gathering groups or whatnot, because I know the people who would be leading those and whatnot are people in this room that I trust already. And then people that maybe aren't in this room who would be leading them are people who would be coming in because they're connected to somebody in this room, and they'd have that transitive trust of going forward. And when the earliest Quakers showed up, I mean, the Balby epistles written in like 1656, which is 6 years after George Fox is already doing a bunch of stuff, and they're writing down, and that's like the earliest list of things that they wrote down, and they're like, oh, we're all going to agree on these sorts of things. So it's really, the temptation is always there to dial it in, to lock it in, and then we can really get after the details of that. But I really want to see us as a group live together, like go together, experiment together, and see what that feels like. And maybe this is terrible, but it's I'm generally good times over theology sometimes. The temptation, theology is great and I love it, but you know what's really great is getting together with people who love God, spending great time together, witnessing each other's lives, and then going out and doing that for other people. And so, I've rambled, but I appreciate you all with this.
I'm going to ask a nerdy question that you can answer at the level of which you think the crowd wants to hear, and then you and I can talk more later. Priority 1B, research and experiment with spiritual practices, and it talks about the research discussions. I'm curious about like research design and methodologies, and who do I nerd out with about this?
Sure.
Whatever level you want to answer that on.
Well, yeah, I do think you just signed up for that task force. I think it will probably be less rigorous than your PhD study, for sure. I think we'll start by picking up from some of our young adult research and looking at what some of the spiritual practices stuff that came up in there, reach out to some of the folks who were involved in that, some of the new folks, try to get a good base of our most consistent participators and talk to them about, what spiritual practices give you life right now, where would you like to try some stuff, reach out to some other groups that are similar and I hope a little bit dissimilar, like Mennonites and Brethren seem like a great group to reach out to on the similar group, but let's reach out to the Catholics and the Orthodox too and just be like, what practices do you think we could implement in our spiritual lives that fit with who we are? So that's a really broad answer. We can have a more detailed conversation about that. We may have already gone past what the audience wanted there, so. More questions, thoughts, concerns, hopes? That Peggy?
Well, I searched through this. I searched through the yearly meeting minutes. I do not see the names of the people who produced this. Is that a secret?
No, it was a task force put together by the executive committee, so it would be in an executive committee report. The task force was John Heschelman, Becky, me, Sean, Chris Edwards joined a little bit later, Brenda Rhoda Heffer. Is that the whole list?
But they're not named in any or just in
They should be named in the report that's a great point, Peggy. I did not think of that.
Well, one thing is on the website, I don't, when I
Oh, it's Sarah
even
Beth.
find the things that are up to date. I find things from years ago.
On the website?
Understand where I find those reports.
We have struggled with a person to help with the communication side of the things, and we now have someone we feel is consistent. So hopefully that stuff will improve in the next few months. But yes, the reporting and all that has not been nearly what it could be. There was a collective sigh I heard from the room about the quality of the website, which we all hold that concern together. It is a collective groan, yes.
Well, we need to be able to improve on something.
Yes, yeah. He said we need to have something we can improve on, so the website is clearly a...
I know, sorry. I also, I mean, you might identify yourself in here in some way that say, ooh, this is something I have some interest in, like Chris and research methods or something awful like that I'm glad I won't be leading. But yeah, if you see, this really is something that I have some curiosity about, or I have some interest in, our overarching goals of being able to be stronger spiritually and better at reaching and loving our neighbor, and those are all things that we want. But it may be that there's a specific part of this that you go, ooh, this really is something I have some interest in. So we'd really like to hear from you on that as well. And there may be some of you that go, man, the idea of a long-range plan is, I might as well go to the dentist and get all my teeth drilled, that kind of thing. I understand that there's that feeling too. So, yeah. And there's some of these things are kind of in works. You heard about these micro meetings and some of these things. There's some intentional conversation going on about, church planning right now. And so there's stuff out there. So, we want to hear from you.
A definition of a micro meeting, it could be a wide variety of things, but a very small group of people who are meeting together, let's say.
Or very short people.
Or I suppose very short people is a possibility too.
Or a very small amount of time.
Yeah, or a very small amount of time. There's lots of ways we could characterize. Okay. I'm not seeing any more hands. Like I said, you're welcome to talk to Sean or I or anyone who's on that group. And look for more stuff in the newsletter about, like, we're going to have a conversation about this. Please join us. Those will probably be via Zoom. Maybe we'll have a couple in-person ones. But also just, especially if there's stuff you're excited about, reach out. If there's stuff you're concerned about, reach out. We are happy to chat and look forward to exploring more of this with you together. Seeing no other urgent need of anyone to speak, I'm going to say you are dismissed to go get wet in the rain, and good luck. The next set of workshops is 4 p.m. Quaker Connect will be in here, and QNO will be over in Friendship. Thank you, friends. I suppose one more thing is there are still some copies of the strategic plan, and if you want to take those back for other people in your meeting to see, that would be great. We'd love to get more feedback, and I'm sure we can send out